This is a Clouds weather alert.
Good late Thursday, early Friday. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now, giving a look at that current Doppler radar across the region. You do see some scattered shower activity. Those temperatures in the 50s here in many spots in North Florida, a few 60s here and in the 40s as we're looking towards South Florida here in some locations. I know we had that logo red though on alert mode because we're looking ahead toward the weekend. I know we already had that nor'easter type pattern here. It's been pretty breezy to windy, really, and it's felt kind of cool out there and just not nice weather. But unfortunately, things are going to worsen by a pretty significant amount. It looks like as we get into toward later Saturday and early Sunday especially. So got to remain alert here for multiple impacts. The odd setup for our area here. We just want you guys to stay weather aware as we're looking at things here across the region. I know we're just going to keep on looking here at the scenarios and the like, and just giving you the latest updates as needed. I know we'll have extended coverage here as it is warranted in the days to come and during the event, especially as we're really focusing. And then just remember also another awarded note here, those holiday decorations. I know it's already been kind of breezy, maybe blowing some stuff around, but it's going to get really windy here at points for many of our zones. So that's something to kind of keep our eyes on here as we do look ahead. So just bear that in mind here. Those holiday decorations really probably need to be secured here because otherwise they could really blow around, blow down the street even. You just got to be really careful in this type of situation. I know we already have the nor'easter type conditions maybe causing some of that to already occur to a degree, but it's going to worsen here by more than we really don't see in this area outside of tropical systems. It would be similar, maybe the impact here, what we're going to get over the weekend, maybe a tropical storm headed across the region. So that's something we really don't talk about. This is not a type of system we generally get around here this time of year. This type of low pressure generally would be in the hurricane season as a tropical storm, but it's not gonna quite. It doesn't look like at this point have the characteristics to get a name system out of it. Really, a name out of this here as we look ahead. So that's something to kind of keep in mind as we're looking at things here. We're just gonna really be paying attention as the situation does evolve. I know. Let's go ahead and kind of just keep looking at things here again. You can see the temperature contrast pretty steep, but I know the winds that we're expecting here as we get toward the weekend look pretty steep here as well. So we're going to go ahead and see the graphics now, and you can see later Saturday and maybe early Sunday PM here, still subject to change as the forecast remains somewhat uncertain. We could have several gusts to 50 miles an hour, scattered power outages are likely, and just have to be really mindful of that here. I know that Jacksonville Jaguars NFL game against Baltimore Sunday night, it should be still kind of windy around, but at that point, at least, we should be seeing the rain out of here at this point in terms of model guidance. It could change out, could shift around some, but we'll continue to monitor the progress of the situation here as the scenario continues to evolve. So I know we also have different things, different graduations as well. So hopefully this will kind of be after those and kind of maybe miss here some of the biggest events per se, but still some events having to be postponed, canceled here more than likely because of these conditions. I know even Sunday night it could be a situation where there's still some trees or power lines, or maybe trees and power lines down toward Jacksonville as you're headed out to that game, headed back from that game. So be really careful. It'll be dark, so that'll make things even more dangerous. Honestly, not too many primetime games there in Jacksonville, and folks aren't even headed to that stadium generally at night. So already kind of a little bit different there, and you add the wind aspect that'll be ongoing, plus the damage maybe that'll be around with some trees, maybe some power lines still down. I gotta be really mindful here. I know those rainfall amounts could have here some flooding. It seems likely that we would have some 2 to 4 inches. Isolated 7-inch totals can't be ruled out here across our region. Still kind of Could shift around some with the maximum totals, but just remember to stay alert because isolated tornadoes possible. Some of those could even be strong here in the state of Florida, especially. And that chance it may focus to the south of our viewing area. We're really going to be watching the whole Florida Peninsula here, but just gonna really have to pay attention. I know again could focus south, but if it doesn't here, that'll really have to be something that is really top of mind. You have to have multiple ways to get alerts anyway. Some local storm surge flooding looks likely here. We'll break that down a little bit more in detail in just a moment. But the tornado threat here, when I say strong tornadoes, and some of that could be focused at the south of our area. I know we're talking about tornadoes there, EF2, EF3, and we'll kind of show that to you there in a scale format. But first, just remember to kind of see here when there's a tornado watch in play. That means conditions favorable for tornadic activity. Stay tuned for the latest in charge devices here. We're just going to continue to monitor this as we look. Have multiple ways to receive alerts. So important, especially in a period where folks maybe want to get away, go off the grid per se. You need to really focus here on this potential. I know you don't want to have to look at the weather over the weekend. Unfortunately, for a third straight weekend, there's going to be a threat of severe weather across our region. This one could be the worst threat of all in terms of the overall severity of things. At least, I mean, in terms of having tornadoes really get up there. It could be the south of the area. That's not out of the question. But even if that doesn't happen, some power outages are likely because the wind's going to have some storm surge issues. We'll get to that here too. But just whenever the tornado warning is issued, you want to get inside that sturdy building here. Put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. Protect yourself from flying debris by putting on a bicycle helmet. I know, really want to try to avoid taking shelter in a mobile home. And then again, that enhanced Fujita scale we measure tornado damage by. There it's determined based on just the damage that had occurred and the 3-second wind gust estimates that come based on certain type of structural problems in the aftermath. You can see here you have two winds of 111 to 135 miles an hour. That's considered a strong tornado, even getting higher violence, EF4, EF5. Not really talking about that here. Don't really get those here in our area as we're looking on that. It doesn't matter though, even a lower end tornado could cause problems in mobile homes. So I don't want to focus too much on this, but when I say strong tornadoes, generally for our area, that means EF2, EF3, not out of the question, at least maybe further south, maybe not as much in Georgia. We'll see. Could be some in southeast Georgia, that potential, probably less towards southwest Georgia. I would think at this point, probably on kind of the back side here, and that threat would be lower up that way. So maybe a little reprieve for you guys in that regard. Maybe not the rain reprieve there for many. Some spots maybe to get way up there, maybe so. But again, we'll continue to monitor this situation very carefully. As we see here, this is an early storm surge forecast. It's really not an official forecast like you would have with a hurricane or a tropical storm, but I had to do some calculations here. This is kind of tricky, but this is preliminary. Subject to change. We may get some official numbers. Ultimately, we have a coastal flood watch here in play from the National Weather Service in Tallahassee, also the National Weather Service in Tampa. So real quick, let's jump on over away from graphics here just for a second. I'll go ahead and see that that's in that turquoise color there. You can see that's a coastal flood watch, and we could have a high tide early Sunday. That could be an issue, but it depends really on when the center of circulation or the center of the low pressure per se comes ashore, and that affects that also where, because if it comes to shore further south, you'd have the winds kind of pushing out, and you wouldn't really have the impact here further up the coast and the west side and the northwest side of things. Now, it could be an issue though for some of our East Coast areas here as well. So just got to be mindful of that. You see the coastal flood advisory there as I look over toward the lime green. Yeah, more coastal flood watches to the south here. So a lot going on. We're going to have some coastal flood warnings, you would think, here as we look ahead in toward the timeline. So let's go ahead and go back over to the graphics now full. And this is just an early look at what could happen from this Gulf low. I know if we had the cold air with this, well, then you could have wintry weather. That's not going to happen. Not cold enough here in this type of setup. It's going to be warm enough. We're going to have some tornadoes in the warm sector. I know, honestly, it'd be really hard. I mean, never really had a system that this much moisture with it coming up and cold air mass around. So, and that's not going to be the case here in terms of any wintry weather, because we've had Gulf lows before, going back to 89. And that's where you had all that wintry weather, but it wasn't as strong as this is. I wouldn't imagine here as you're looking at things. So, just an odd pattern here that we're in. We're in El Nino though, but again, no snow, nothing like that. There's no chance of that from the system anywhere in our covered area or even close. So, it's gonna be too warm. You can see that 3 to 5 feet above ground level though for Cedar Key. 2 to 4 feet above ground level for Jacksonville Beach, 3 to 5 feet right now above ground level. What I'm forecasting for Brunswick here, as I know this pattern, it really depends on when this kind of moves in, where it tracks. It depends on the tides here, high tide, and we could have to move these numbers around, probably will to some degree. This is really kind of a broad brush here at this point. These are pretty high though for a system like this. I mean, to put this in perspective for Cedar Key and why, honestly, and I haven't really heard this from officials here, so I kind of just want to kind of go over this a little slowly here per se. Honestly, we maybe, if that number goes up just a little bit more there for Cedar Key, if this tracks south, then better news. But if it tracks west of Cedar Key, then worse news. We might have to be talking about some evacuations here. Yes, evacuations here for the Big Bend coast, because when you put this into perspective here, it's not far off what we had during the storm of the century, the only non-tropical one on this list. There's a chance we could get this one up there. Whatever you want to label this here. I know some areas had the storm of the century impact a lot worse here than Cedar Key did, but you can see Idalia with 6.9 feet. It was supposed to be quite a bit more really with the pattern. We ended up having it lower than forecast there. The track, the size, the eyewall replacement cycle, and no high tide. So, I mean, you think about what happened in Dixie County now. If this, let's say it goes Citrus County with the center of this, and you'd have the winds pushing out. You wouldn't have it getting toward this list here, but if it makes landfall, quote unquote, here, it technically wouldn't be if it's not a named system. But if you have that making as a trek there with the center up toward like Wakulla County, then we're in trouble here toward Dixie County coastline, Taylor County coastline, and Levy County coastline. Because we'd be rivaling at least. I mean, honestly, those numbers there, the strengthening is supposed to happen so quickly here. Honestly, I probably have to raise that more like with as high as 6 feet. But again, we wouldn't have near that much if it would probably be on the low end of the 3 to 5 feet at least if it took that track here further off. Honestly, could have some of the water coming on out though here. So it's a very odd setup. We really never hardly see this. Only 93 is the only one that comes up in this list here, and at least for this one spot here in recent history. This didn't go back forever and ever. You see 85 late on here. It's really an odd situation. So stay tuned, because there's a chance that we could get a pretty nasty storm surge. I know it's not a hurricane. Sometimes folks don't want to call it a storm surge, but it's a storm surge. So let's go ahead and just keep looking at this here. Again, just looking. I know it's been a tough year. You don't want to hear this. I don't want to say it. But I mean, you see Dixie County, Horse Beach. This is what it looked like a few weeks after. And these areas are still very vulnerable here. Very vulnerable. So just keep that in mind here as you're looking at things. It'll make things even worse potentially. The storm surge here. This rush of water per se that could come on in early Sunday if the track's to the west. Now, if it trends further south, if it's centered in Citrus County, Pinellas County, a lot less of a concern. Maybe some vulnerabilities somehow get exploited, but probably more of an East Coast issue with some of the damage from the coal. I mean, it's a really tricky setup because you don't necessarily get some of the stuff ran on this in terms of models either that are really available here when it's not considered tropical, but it's actually going to have similar impacts to a lower level type of cyclone per se. So again, I'll go back to this here a little bit. You can see Josephine in 96, that was a tropical storm, and maybe it's similar to that. You never know. And because of the vulnerability we already had here from Idalia this year, I mean, the highest there you've had, you're still kind of in a spot here where another system could really be problematic here more than it generally would. So this is very odd to be talking about here in December, but here we are. So again, let's go ahead and just show you here again this graphic. 3 to 5 feet around Cedar Key right now. Now we're gonna watch Brunswick. I know it's an area because this pattern we've had this with some of the storms in the past. I mean, this track here, we've seen some systems kind of bring their water levels up, and they're kind of in a spot in southeast Georgia that's a little more vulnerable with some of the marshes and the like. So gotta watch them. Gotta keep watching. I mean, you've had the St. John's come up before in these patterns, so it's kind of tricky here. Just stay tuned. Don't want to scare anybody, but we're going into a weekend when it's into the holidays or in the holiday period, per se, depending on how you're looking at things. And you just got to be really, really staying on top of the scenario because that's going to really catch people off guard. I just want to emphasize this because it's you don't hear a name, you don't hear tropical storm so-and-so. This is not named, but it's going to have very similar impacts to a name system. So please just make sure you're paying attention. Again, you even see some of the gusts now out there. It's still a storyline, but it's going to be worsening as the situation develops. I mean, a gust of 39, a non-thunderstorm gust there. That's technically tropical storm force now. As you get out toward Franklin County, we had some of those earlier in the 40 range, but again, can be talking about even higher gusts. I mean, I'm seeing gusts around 50 multiple, but there could be some outside of thunderstorms around here closer to 60 in an isolated spot or two. That is not normal at all here, folks. Here in this scenario outside of a thunderstorm for this time of year outside or any time of year outside of a tropical system or again a thunderstorm squall line. That's not what this would necessarily be here with some of these. You could have it in that too because we're going to end up having some storms, maybe a squall line somewhere in this situation develops. It's very, very complex to say the least here. We got to stay on top of this. Can't let our guard down over the weekend here. Let's go ahead and see that rainfall forecast now. This is next 7 days, but really we're focusing just on the weekend with pretty much all of this here. It's going to go up the coast too, so winds here can knock out some power too as we get further up. Make sure you're charging those devices up here as you're looking ahead. I mean, you can kind of visualize it. That track of this is going to go across here, Florida, and up in close to, if not over Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. So winds, rain, it's gonna happen pretty quick here. Moving up today on Sunday, probably is what we're thinking at this point. Maybe into Monday here as well, depending on the exact timeline. So just make sure. I know you have that interactive radar available, cloudweather.com/radar, but we'll be on for our local area as needed for the state. If there's big tornado risk breaking out here. Further down the state as well, we really have some type of significant tornado and tornadic activity. So again, we're in alert mode. Stay alert. I know it's not a name system, so you might not be thinking it's as bad here as maybe it could end up being. You don't hear a name. You don't have. I mean, generally, I mean, honestly, I don't remember too many coastal flood watches here for that coast and. What that generally means here, honestly, is if this is a tropical system, it's pretty similar, if not the same criteria, to what you'd have a storm surge watch for. So that's kind of alarming. It's just not a tropical system, so we don't call it storm surge watch, storm surge per se, in some circles. But that's what it is here. We gotta stay alert. I know this is not Sandy, but we had an issue in Sandy back in 2012 here, up toward the northeast per se. The pressure's not going to be near that deep. It's not going to be as strong, near that strong of a system, but people didn't take it seriously because it wasn't a named storm. It was Sandy off the coast, but then it became extra tropical, so they didn't issue any of the tropical alerts. We're not going to have that here probably. It's not going to be tropical, but the pressure is going to be there. What you'd have, meaning that the strength of this low is going to be similar to what you'd have in a tropical storm, a stronger tropical storm. And that center here, I mean, honestly, as I look at things, I mean, you could be coming across North Florida somewhere, and then that's going to really be unusual here in a certain area. I mean, we had really low pressure on Taylor County, Dowling Park, but if this goes east or west here, we could be talking about, I mean, even if it goes over there, a pressure record maybe for the month, but I mean, really, yeah, as you look here, we could be talking about pressure records for a while here, going back, because we haven't had too deep a pressure here in Stark, and then the winds, I mean, it depends on where you are. If it goes right over the damage, there is more vulnerability, so it's going to really make things worse. But then if it goes over an area that hadn't been hit as hard lately, and it's a little bit broader of a system, then that could kind of be an issue with the expanded wind field per se as well. So there's a lot to unpack here. You got to stay tuned. Maybe we're kind of in a spot where it doesn't end up being as bad as it could be. It's just very odd. Right when people aren't paying attention, you gotta pay attention here, because this is one of the systems that has a really high, really per se a type of potential with it. Doesn't mean it'll use that. Doesn't mean it'll maximize that. But this is just something. This time you're outside of hurricane season, you really don't have a system here in terms of some of the other hazards that are as high as what you would have with a tropical storm, but this would potentially have that. So you can see here on this forecast right now, talking about 4+ inches on average there around Tallahassee. Other areas 2.5+ inches on average here. At minimum, pretty much the rest of the viewing circle. So again, that kind of tells the story here, and that's all pretty much focused Saturday night, this later Saturday into Sunday here. So you just got to be really careful as we go ahead here and move along. And just remind you, if you're on for any tornado warning storm within our 62 counties, we'll have special coverage as needed. It's a very complex scenario, and because it didn't have a name, there's different things here that may occur sometimes in terms of coverage and just the nature of things. But folks need to kind of prepare for this here as we look ahead. Again, going to have impacts. As we see that 7-day now, you can see 90% chance of rain later Saturday, maybe Saturday morning. If you have something, you may be okay through about that lunch hour. But after that, things will deteriorate pretty quickly here. You see Sunday, the rain chances most of the day, but maybe before that football game, Sunday night, things will improve. That's what we're thinking right now. That Sunday night game in Jacksonville on NBC, Baltimore Ravens at Jacksonville Jaguars. Hopefully things will be good enough here. There won't be too many like power outages around where things that have to be pushed back with that game or anything like that. It's not completely out of the realm of possibility that that would happen, but hopefully at this point the damage wouldn't be that bad here in terms of still being able to have that go on. But you see it's going to really, the pattern is going to bring the cooler air back on in. It's going to be pretty clear though. That's the good news. You're not really talking about rain here, but you see 30s, maybe getting close to freeze, if not frost here. But I know it's already kind of breezy, but it's going to get windy, and as windy as it ever gets around here outside of thunderstorms and outside of a tropical system Saturday into Sunday. I mean, I can't quite quantify it here at this point. Kind of remember a system here, watching North Florida, South Florida weather. I mean, I grew up here and pretty much, and in over 20 years, I can't remember a system quite like this one. It's not as bad. Obviously, the pressure isn't near as low as a Dahlia for the specific spots, so we're not going to have damage like that unless we have a tornado come through. Talking about like the wind damage in Perry, we're not going to have that without a tornadic activity. So that's the good news. But still, I mean, you're just going to have to be on guard, because this is something we just haven't really dealt with too much around here. This is not a type of pattern we generally get in our area here, with the models presenting some odd numbers. Hopefully it's a situation where you can say after the fact, maybe we're overhyping it. I mean, we hope the situation isn't as tricky here as it looks. Maybe it is broader and doesn't really come together. It's going to have to come together pretty quickly. We have a couple different things going on here, really. A few different things. In some ways, it's going to all kind of come together here on our region as you're looking at the weather map. So this is very tricky, because what if they don't come together as much? Then maybe we don't have this, but right now the models are in pretty good agreement that things are going to come together, and haven't really changed too much since our late Tuesday update, even with you guys here. As you see, several gusts to 50 are likely across our area. Scattered power outages are likely. I mean, there could be a coastal spot or two. We have widespread power outages or if a tornado hits an area, obviously widespread power outages. So make sure you charge those devices up. Make sure you take those holiday decorations, those Christmas decorations down here, or at least make sure they're secured. I mean, just make sure they're not going to fly around and cause problems here, cause damage. I mean, depending on what they are, maybe even break a window or something in this type of wind. This is very unusual for this time of year. I mean, we don't really ever have a scenario like this outside of a tornado around Christmas. We'd have wind this strong over this widespread of an area. So I can't really think of just a scenario here where decorations could be kind of flying around. I mean, there could be a situation here as we look ahead where you think what they had in South Florida going back. Not too many of you may have even heard about it in a way, but it was localized around Miami. I know they had power blasts and a lot of power outages here. As we had a non-tropical low there going back a few weeks ago. And some folks said it was worse than anything they've had, maybe since Irma down there. It was localized, but it was a big deal. This could be on that level, could be a little bit worse even. So we just got to be really careful. We don't know what to expect here, but it's the end of a weekend where there's a high potential with this if everything came together. For impacts we really don't see around here outside of a tropical system, outside of a hurricane. I mean, this would be, I mean, you hear these numbers, honestly, you see 50, think, well, a hurricane isn't until 74 sustained, but really, you don't get the gust around here unless maybe a strong tropical storm or a hurricane would you get gusts to this level. This isn't what you would see in a weak tropical storm around here, probably. This would be a stronger tropical storm, rivaling almost a Category 1 hurricane. So, that's why we got to be really careful, and it's a little bit broader than what you'd have with that, so maybe a little bit wider, these stronger winds here. So got to be mindful of that. Again, we're going to stay on top of it here in the Weather Center. We're going to be here around the clock and break back in as needed. You can count on me here for the very latest. Just reminding you guys here of everything, all the different platforms. I'll go to that here in a moment. I'm not going to quite fit on this graphic, so let me go ahead and jump back over here to our other look at things, our other look real quick. And just remind you guys, again, Facebook, Casey Cloud X, Cloud Weather there with the latest, Twitter /X at Cloud Casey, YouTube at Cloud Weather. You can hit that subscribe button there. Twitch there, Cloud Weather, and cloudweather.com. Here you have that interactive radar available. You have the links to all these different sites here as well. So just to remind you guys that you see that coastal flood watch there in the turquoise color. Gonna probably have some coastal flood warnings, which are really an equivalent in some ways, or close to a storm surge warning, depending on how you look at that. Here it's just a different time of year, different type of system in a way. But I mean the impacts will be very similar. Again, just keep it here. We have had worse before, don't get me wrong. We've had so many tropical systems over the years, and we're not going to have the worst of the impacts that we've seen within some of those here toward our counties, but this could be almost a little more broad here. Of course, when I say that outside of tornadoes, because somebody in the state, especially in Florida, maybe in South Florida, but probably more Florida, could get a strong tornado, and that there could be a pretty nasty trail of destruction there. But outside of that, you wouldn't have damage as bad on what you saw there. It's going to be more broad brush, per se, in terms of the winds. The rain might concentrate pretty significantly in one spot, closer to 7 inches, while another gets 2 inches. So it's very tricky. That surge flooding here, we got to watch the East Coast. We've had the storms like Nicole cause issues. I mean, that was more just, right toward Flagler County in the south of the area with some of the worst of that. But some of those areas are still vulnerable there with the overall pattern here, the wind. A lot of uncertainty. That's still the key word, even though we haven't changed much. It still has to develop, and things could change very rapidly in the models here. Really, it's just, I know this hasn't got that much attention. It's gotten a little bit here in local media and national media. Don't get me wrong, compared to, I mean, a lot of these other systems here aren't as significant in the modeling ahead of time. I know we've had some nor'easters over the years, but they kind of stay off the coast. But it's going to go, the center is going to go right across here, and it deserves a pretty good bit of attention here. We just don't want folks to think, even though it doesn't have a name, that it's not going to be like a named system. Because right now it looks like it would be like a named system. Cooler air, of course, around. So you need a jacket, and this is kind of, I mean, it's almost like what you would see sometimes in like the Northeast here when you have some of these conditions. I mean, we'll just have to keep watching. I know this thing about one of the tropical systems earlier this year, we had a lot of power outages in Maine, but it didn't really hit there, and it was cooler up there, and almost maybe similar to that. Around here, we'll see. Just kind of guessing at this point because we're uncertain, because this is not something we generally see around here. Very unusual system for the area. Just have to be kind of mindful. You got to remain on guard. Kind of stay tuned here. I know I'll be giving you guys the latest as the situation does progress. Again, I'll be here as needed through the weekend period. Let me see if there's any questions or comments. Let me see if there's anything from you guys at home there. I know it's pretty late, but let me see if there's anything here in terms of anything that you guys want answered. I don't see anything right now, but I know as we look at things, I know we'll be here watching. As we look, I know things are going to calm down toward Tuesday there and Wednesday, it looks like. So we're not going to have a formal update Tuesday as we start to get into holiday mode. We've been here and have to be on guard here. I guess it'll be 3 weekends in a row now, so I'm not going to have a formal update on Tuesday. We'll have a next formal update scheduled for Thursday. I mean, things can change if we have just so much damage around, or just if a situation does require me, if the pattern really shifts on us here. But right now, looking like no formal update on Tuesday here. But we'll be with you as needed through the weekend. So keep it tuned to Cloud Weather. We'll keep you guys up to date. For now, have a great night. Stay safe out there. And just keep it tuned here for the latest.